Honey, where are you going?
Where are you going?
Again? Just where are you going?
Where are you going? You're not going to the bar again, are you?
You like hanging out, drinking beer at the bar, talking sports? Come on out and join us weekly. Guys at the Bar Talking Sports, your podcast for just that. Hanging out, drinking some beer, talking sports.
Are you really doing season 4 of that stupid podcast?
Y'all know the name of the show. It's Guys at the Bar Talking Sports. And what do guys do when they talk sports at the bar? They drink beer. So if you want to buy us a beer, you can Venmo us. The Venmo is at Guys at the Bar Talking Sports. So today we are interviewing Chef Dann Reid, a member of our Guys at the Bar Talking Sports group and also a fellow podcaster and host of the Eating Liberty podcast. It's a once weekly show with a focus on food. And who does not like food, right? We don't typically do interview-style interviews, Dan. Here on the Guys at the Bar Talking Sports podcast, we basically just throw a microphone between us, drink some beers, and talk. And we literally have background noise, no filter, the whole 9 yards, just to make it more authentic. But during a football game, who does not love to eat food, right? So what better thing to do on our first interview, the first interview we've ever done on the show, actually, than to talk about game day food, game day tailgating food, the whole 9 yards, So I feel like I know you, Dan. I really do. I've known you for a long time just through the podcasting world. Without getting too deep into politics, though, why don't you give a little bit about yourself, because that's how I know you through some political podcasting and stuff, but also you've been doing Eating Liberty for a long time now. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, as it relates to the topic of the day, I am a former chef of, I don't even remember how many years, and also held the position of head baker, which meant I could also do some pastry. So there isn't too very much in a commercial kitchen that I can't do. And so in terms of the podcasting and this, I'm getting close to now. This is like inside baseball about podcasting. They give you a choice to make seasons. I don't know what the hell that means. So I decided that every year is going to be a season. I'm getting close to ending year 5 of this podcast, which is a long time, man.
Yeah, I feel like it was around 2019 or 2018 when you started.
Yeah, you were doing, I don't know how you did a once a day political analysis podcast. Oh my God.
Oh, that was insane. Yeah. Too much work. That's why I'm sticking with sports, my man, because politics drives me freaking bonkers. Yeah. So.
Well, you still get the same, it's interesting. You get the same polarization without the same negative outcome.
Absolutely. That's completely agreed. So you can yell at people and scream at them and holler at them. You don't become an evil bastard.
Right.
Because it's all camaraderie at that point with sports,
5 minutes after the game is over, let's have another beer, and okay, now who's going to play euchre?
Exactly. So for you've been doing that show for 5 years now. You focus a lot on food, and that's why I wanted to bring you onto the show, because who doesn't like a good game day meal, right? Who doesn't like to tailgate and craft some great food? I'm actually tailgating this weekend. At the South Carolina versus Furman game. Not a big game, but who knows what's going to happen with that game, because Carolina was looking a little bit rough last week. I don't know if you watched that specific game. Tell me about your teams, though. What teams are you into? What's your favorite football teams?
Well, I have two, and they are both because of state affiliation. And so one of the other reasons you know me is because you and I share a friendly yet satisfying rivalry of Florida teams. You are a fan of that school down in Gainesville, and I am not.
You're an FSU fan. I'm allowing you to be on my podcast, even so.
True. So I am actually a Seminole by I feel like I graduated from FSU. So go Noles. The other team that I'm a big fan of because of my residency and where I was born is Michigan.
Yeah.
So And that wasn't to start with. Originally, I was a Michigan State fan, but that was because my stepfather went actually to Michigan Agricultural College before it was Michigan State University. So he was a Spartan through and through, and it sounded like it was a good thing to do to, sort of make friends with the new stepfather. But my brother actually got into and graduated from Michigan, so my allegiance changed. So now I'm all in on Go Blue, and I'm pretty happy when Michigan State wins, but only when they don't play Michigan.
So and that's a pretty beastly rivalry right there. For me, you're gonna love this. I chose Michigan, Florida State, Texas, and LSU as my top 4 at the beginning of the season. So I got, as much as I hate it, I absolutely despise Florida State. You know that. We've had this conversation before, but I still put them in my top 4 because, man, they were looking good last season, and they brought back like 17 of their starters from last season, and they did a really good job in the transfer portal. Figure they're going to do well this season. They beat LSU the other day. I had LSU in my top 4 as well at the end of the season, and I'm pulling them out because of the performance. I thought it would be a 3-point game, but now I'm going along with. So you might be happy with that, Dan. You might be happy with that Florida State and Michigan being in there. And I'm sure. What do you think will happen if Florida State plays Michigan at the end of the season? Unlikely event, but could happen as the championship game. Who would you go for then? Where does your true loyalties lie?
Well, it's interesting. So, it has happened before. It wasn't that long ago. Michigan got beat. I think I remember that, right? So here's the other thing. My wife is all in on Seminoles. She likes Michigan because I like Michigan, but she's a Florida girl through and through.
So she might force you onto that, huh?
Well, it becomes an interesting sort of in-house rivalry.
It does.
So there's a funny thing about being a Michigan sports fan. And
what's that?
And that is, well, if you're a Michigan sports fan, that means you're a Lions fan. And that means that no matter how good it's going, you are always ready for somehow they're going to screw it up. You always just... the Lions do that to you. You're just always ready. We could be 10-0. So, that's all right. We got one more game. If there's a way to lose, the Lions are going to find it. And even when Barry Sanders and Billy Sims was there, it's like, wow, this is fantastic. And you always, as a Lions fan, hold out just a little bit because you're pretty sure your team's going to find a way to screw it up. So.
And that translates over to Michigan sometimes as well, especially the last 2 seasons.
All of them. So we go back to Chris Webber and the unavailable timeout. Like, dude, come on! And Chris Webber had a very fine career in the NBA, except all I remember is timeout.
Yeah, good point. So that's crazy stuff, man. And I'm sorry about that, but I do think that Michigan has one beast of a team this season. Looking at their schedule, they have it pretty easy through Penn State, which I think is mid-October, and then obviously the final game of the year. But Ohio State, in my opinion, was not in my top 4 at the end of this week, even though they're in a lot of people's top 4. I think that I'm ranked number 6 when I did my own poll. So you're Michigan, and until they prove me wrong, Michigan Wolverines are going to be in that top 4 at the end of the season. Let's go ahead and jump into the conversation that we need to have, though, which is about some tailgating food. That's what I brought you on this show for. That's where your expertise lie, right? So let's go ahead and jump right into it, all right?
Sure.
So it's game day. Everyone loves a good tailgate. Everyone loves some food. I told you I'm going to a tailgate this weekend. It's that time of year, right? It's starting to get cooler. I mean, South Carolina, it seems like it never gets cool, but this weekend it's going to be cooler. Low 80s cool for you, Dan? Because to us, it's been like 99 degrees in South Carolina for the last 4 months, it feels like. And so to us, that's going to be cooler. You might even see people wearing long sleeve shirts, believe it or not. No, that's not going to be the case. But it's game day I get there at 8 a.m., let's say, right? What are some essentials that I would want to have in my spread at 8 a.m.? Because, it's breakfast time. So what are some of those essentials? You can give me some snacks. You can give me some food. I mean, you can even give me some cocktails. I don't care. Go ahead.
Well, so there's the ways that this can level up. So the simplest, and you probably have seen people with rigs of almost unimaginable expense.
I have,
And
yes.
that doesn't necessarily mean they're the best. They may have the most expendable cash, but that doesn't mean they can use the equipment. And then you see the guys with just very simple, modest things turning out some incredible fare. So there's the minimum stuff, and then there's high end stuff, and there's ways to slowly take your tailgating skills and levels up higher and higher and higher. So
For sure.
part of well, it doesn't require planning, but it depends on what you're going to be making. So if you have modest resources and you're not feeding a lot of people, then I'm not really sure what venues, so like the parking lot in South Carolina, I don't know what the rules are at any particular stadium's parking lot.
Oh, we can do whatever we want to. Like there's people that buy all the way around that stadium specifically, and we could just take this generically nationwide, right? Like at the University of Florida, you just park wherever the hell you want to, and you sit there and just on campus, you just park wherever you want to, and you throw up your tent, do whatever. You have people with that elaborate setup with an RV that's turned into a gator van. Same thing at Carolina. Like there's people that have these cockabooses where they could buy these big cabooses from a train, and these people will sit there and it has a full kitchen, the whole 9 yards. But from a food perspective, like there are certain things at 8 a.m. that I would want to put on my plate. Getting a little bit creative and things of that nature, right? So you could cook some bacon, sausage, and who knows. But is there some good, game day food that would be great on my plate in the morning time?
Well, yeah. My reservation was about heat source. Are you limited only to gas? Do you have to? Can it be only propane, or can you have open flame? That's what I don't know.
Oh yeah, you cannot have open flame around there, I would imagine. But you could have gas, propane, little grill type thing set up. A lot of people get a little bit more creative. They might even bring out like a Traeger grill or something like that. I've seen those out there before as well. So you could have a good something smoked if you wanted to as well, I imagine.
Okay, so if a Traeger Traeger's gas with the pellets, and that's fine. So I'm thinking you're not going to be having open wood coals to cook on. That's probably not going to be permitted. So
which would be fun, but I don't think so.
It would be awesome. It would be so amazing.
That would be great.
I don't know if people bring generators, so you could bring an electric smoker since you can't have coals. Although, and this is weird, I don't know. Maybe Traeger's the limit of it because my smoker takes actual wood chips. They never actually light, but it creates embers and who knows. So anyway, so for breakfast, with a little bit of planning, if you know you're going on Saturday and you know you're doing this, so the easy thing is hit your butcher shop or hit your grocery store and find the bratwurst or the garlic sausage or the andouille or the kind of sausage that appeals to you first thing in the morning.
But from a butcher shop, right? Not from Publix or wherever. With just in the Johnsonville area or what? Okay.
I have in my town there is actually a butcher shop for real freestanding.
Oh.
They make a dozen kinds of sausages, and they've got pork and chicken and pig and meat. They got beef, so it's a legitimate butcher shop. I've never asked if they make sausage because I make my own, but I imagine if you had the right quantity, they would do it. But,
and they will make. And I've seen there's a place here in Columbia, South Carolina, called Old Timey Butcher Shop, and they'll do sausages as well. So. They're going to do a better job than if you're going to go buy the store-bought ones, I imagine, right?
Absolutely. Well, yes, they're going to do a better job because you can sort of customize it. They're going to do a better job because it's not commercial with all the crap you can't grow, pick, or pronounce. And you're keeping, so if you shop at your local Mega Mart, you're still keeping the cash in your town, but
Mhm.
you're feeding corporate, whereas your local butcher shop guy, that's actually staying in town. So that's another show. So
Yeah.
so you know you're going. So you're gonna buy sausages. You may not want to have rolls to go with them. I would avoid the
Mhm.
rolls, but you might get rolls. Um, I haven't seen too often, but every once in a while you can find hot dog sized potato rolls, which are pretty stinking good.
They are good. Yes, they are for sure.
Then you're gonna want peppers and onions, I'm sure.
Mhm.
I like adding. So this is the prep work part of getting ready for the tailgate. I like chopped tomatoes in with my peppers and onions, but I detest the skin on the tomatoes once it's cooked. So I blanch them, chop them in ice water, and then peel the skin off and then dice them up. And that way I don't have to worry about that funny little piece of onion paper in my mouth. Um,
How much work is that to blanch them and peel it off? Is it pretty easy once they're blanched?
it depends on your skill and how comfortable you are at the stove. For people whose idea of oatmeal is a packet of Quaker and microwaving the water, now, that might be a challenge. For the people
Mhm.
who cook all the time, that's whatever. That's 3 minutes of time. I can do that.
Pretty
It's
typical then. Okay.
it's not hard.
Mhm.
The challenging thing with peeling a tomato is if it isn't particularly ripe, or if it's one of those hot house tomatoes that looks red but it really isn't, the skin will be very difficult to peel. This time of the year, most people's gardens should be producing some extraordinarily ripe red tomatoes. Those peel
Mhm.
like a dream. They're amazing.
Okay.
So they peel fast. The key is make sure it's boiling salted water. Drop a
Yep.
couple in at a time so the water stays boiling. 30 seconds at most. Put it
Mhm.
into an ice bath right away and keep
Mhm.
the water boiling. If the tomato doesn't peel easily and rapidly, put it back in the water for a few more seconds and until it finally comes off all the way. Um,
Okay.
so that's a way to
So
go. Yeah, go
so
ahead.
throw some peppers, onions, then the tomato, blanch it, get that skin off, then dice it up from there.
Yep.
And then what up? And then you're throwing all that. Then you're how are you gonna what are you gonna saute that up or what are you gonna do with it at that point?
Uh, so I'm gonna probably need extra pork fat. So if you do bacon on Sunday brunch, you're saving your bacon
Mm.
fat. You are saving your bacon fat. So take some of that with you. So you put that on the griddle. Start with the peppers and onions first. So
Mhm.
all the veg has water. That's obviously everybody knows that. But the availability of the water in the peppers and the onions is harder to get to than the availability of the water in the tomato. So
Okay.
let the peppers and onions cook down until they get limp. You start to see a bit of color, and they'll start to exude some of the water. So the color, the caramelization on the onions, that's flavor. We want that to happen. When
Mhm.
you get it to the point you want, you can also add garlic, but not before you see a good color on your onions and peppers. Add
Okay.
the garlic to that, toss it around a little bit. When you smell the aroma of garlic, it's like, oh, okay, here's coming. Now you have to do something. The something you have to do is add the tomatoes to those peppers, onions, and garlic. And as they heat up, they're going to release their water. That's going to slow down and stop the browning process. So
Mhm.
you aren't getting any more color in your tomatoes, or I'm sorry, on your onions, peppers, but now everything's cooking together. Add a little salt. And now you have a great accompaniment to go with that whatever it is you're having. If you're doing andouille, you can buy a hot pepper to add to that just to give that heat an extra kick. If you're one of those sadistic people who like to have really, really hot food, then add a couple of habaneros to it. Or if you're really mean, add a ghost pepper, but don't give it to yourself. Hey, Frank, come
Yeah.
here. Oh, try this. Well, Frank could be mad at you, but you're going to get a good laugh out of it.
At least we'll get a good laugh out of it. And you know what? Sometimes there's that one person in your group that you're able to do that to, and they won't take it too seriously, right? And then other times you kind of know who's going to get too serious on it, and then other people probably won't.
Right.
I can think of one person right now that I could do that to, and he might get pissed for a second, but you know what? Maybe
He
I'll
will,
try
though.
that on Saturday. Who knows?
All right.
So I got
We,
some. So you got some sausage. You got some. You got some a good little topping to go on top of that. Anything else for that breakfast time tailgate?
well, the way to take this, so we've got these nice caramelized veggies with good flavor. There's a
Hmm.
little garlic and tomatoes, so we have We have an acid to bring out the flavor from the tomatoes, and there's a nice balance of things going on there. So
There is.
if you have fresh marjoram, it's not the same as oregano. They look similar. If you go way back, they're from the same sort of root, but that's pun intended. But marjoram has a different flavor than oregano. And in that mix of stuff, it's going to be fantastic. It's not necessary. Rosemary would work good, but very little of it. Savory would be okay. Marjoram really is the thing. Oregano would work too, but this is a way to take that up one more level of flavor and just say, wow. So people can remember, holy crap, remember when Ray made that sausage? What the heck did he do? I don't know. My standard answer whenever people say, how'd you do that? Just something I threw together.
Sounds delicious, actually. Sounds delicious.
So
what about, so go on. Let you.
Well, the other thing we can do for breakfast is little breakfast sliders.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be, so we talked
that
about.
That would feed a group.
It would feed a group. It'd be easy to do. I mentioned the possibility of finding potato roll hot dog buns, but well, I'm going to assume things that aren't true, but I will say what is probably certainly true, that in every Publix in the Southeast, you can go in there and get potato rolls. Now,
you can, yes.
There are potato rolls in the grocery store here, and they aren't exactly the same. There's something magical about Publix and potato rolls, and they make spectacular buns for sliders.
Okay.
So you got your slider.
Better than your King's Hawaiian type thing, or what? What are your thoughts on that?
I find King's Hawaiian inedible. I can't stand it. It's pure. I'd rather eat the bag than eat the bun inside.
Well, that says a lot. Different people have different tastes, I think, on those as well. So, and it's coming from somebody like yourself, I think that the standards are probably really, really high when it comes to the type of food you're eating, as I would imagine.
Well, in some cases, yes. I mean, I do have a high preference in some cases, but I'm not such an arrogant prick that I won't eat somebody else's food that they've made. You know,
for sure.
Part of there's and this is the thing that makes tailgating really fun. It isn't necessarily that you've got the best rig and the most expensive cut of meat, because you can really muck up a really expensive cut of meat pretty easily.
Yeah.
So it isn't about, to me, it isn't a display of affluence and arrogance. Tailgating, it's rubbing, giving the other team a little bit of ribbon, maybe the ghost pepper, but it's a camaraderie in a community. Even if you're not opposing teams, there's a fraternity there.
There is.
Truck to truck, and you're going to see different things. And I think for the most part, sometimes a little bit too much beer turns a good time into a not good time. But generally, the thing about the tailgating is the brotherhood and the fraternity and the camaraderie and the event of that community around the ceremony of football. The food is almost incidental, but we want it to be good. Sometimes we want it to be great. And so that comes not with the expensive rig. He might do it, but it comes with sound, proper cooking procedures and techniques.
Gotcha.
And you can do that on anything.
Yeah. And speaking about libations, because you mentioned sometimes those drinks get flowing, and if you're starting at 8 a.m., sometimes those drinks are flowing pretty well by 5 if it's a late game.
You're starting at 8 a.m. You're a hardcore MF, man.
Hey, that's how the LSU fans roll, my man. I've only heard stories about that, but that's why at 6 o'clock game over there in Louisiana is a pretty rough game for sure. And we do have some LSU fans listening on the show, by the way. So we want to make sure that they have the right beverage for a nice little cocktail going on first thing in the morning. Do you recommend like a good Bloody Mary, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, for the LSU fans, I think we should invent Tiger Tears. Poor baby. Bloody Marys, I have a friend in Tallahassee who posts pictures of her Bloody Marys every Sunday for brunch. And quite literally, it looks like a buffet with a beverage.
What do you mean by that?
She has got the 8 or 9 skewers sticking out of this thing with all manner of different kinds of grilled and barbecued food items from bacon and grilled shrimp and pieces of pork and a celery stick is almost too demeaning to that particular drink, and just all this stuff, pickled onions, just oh, and then by the way, there's this beverage, but really it's food with a drink. It's a complete meal.
That's a lot of calories too, you know. I've seen some
Yeah.
before with like with 4 or 5 different shrimp on there. You got some scallops, you got some fried chicken tenders, and
Yeah, just
olives and everything else. Yeah, the celery stalk is just garnish at that point.
well,
You know,
if you're drinking at 8 o'clock in the morning, I don't think calorie intake is your first primary concern.
especially on game day for sure. I'm not a day drinker. I typically refrain from drinking during the day unless I'm like, you know, major vacation on the beach or whatever. But you know, I do know some people that like to have a nice Bloody Mary in the morning and so forth. But you know what? When it's getting late, you're sitting there. It's, you know, sometimes those tailgates don't start until 2, 3 in the afternoon. For example, the one that we're going to this weekend, the games doesn't start till 7:30, so I think we're going to arrive around 2 or 3. And you know what we're thinking about is we're meeting some friends who you know own a spot, and we're going to be walking possibly a mile to get there. So what's something quick that I could just whip up? So my wife and I, we hop out of the car. We don't want to have to carry a big backpack in, and we don't have the ability to bring a bunch of stuff into the tailgate. We want to have a nice, quick something that we can whip up. It's small. It'll feed a bunch of people and so forth. Do you have any ideas on some good food like that?
Well, you know in advance that you're going, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. So the key distinction here is you know at least a day ahead that you're doing this thing, as opposed to getting the call at 7 in the morning and say, "Dude, come on, we got a tip."
Yeah. We've been planning this for a couple of days now, and tonight we're gonna get started. So
right, that's a whole other issue. That's a bigger problem. But if you know you're going and you recognize you've got some carrying issues, you don't feel like carrying for a mile, things are going to get heavy. So
for sure, yeah, we want to be able to throw it in like a little cooler maybe, and just start walking and get where we're gonna go. And obviously, we're gonna be carrying some beers in there too. So
duh.
you know, we gotta have something that maybe you throw into a bowl. You know, something good. What do you got for me, Dan?
Well, you know, I think that everybody probably really likes dips. So
yeah, good point.
So a homemade, now this is a big difference. You know, you can go and buy, and there's in the dairy case in your cooler, and I don't know, your grocery store, I don't know exactly where it is, but it's in a little red plastic tub, looks a little bit like a sour cream container, and it's a French onion dip, and it's fine. Big deal. It's certainly better than that stuff you buy on the shelf next to the chips that's not refrigerated.
For sure.
Don't buy that. But you can make your own. And I've got a recipe on the blog page for dips, especially a dip like that. So the main base is mayonnaise, but the real addition there, now some recipes call for fresh onions. The problem with fresh onions is you put them in raw. Man, it is a potency most people don't prefer, because all you get is that astringent onionness, and you don't get anything behind it. So, dry onion. I know it's not, oh, chef using dry onion. I use dry spices a lot, in particular, dry onion and dry garlic, for two main reasons. One, it doesn't go bad. Well, it'll go bad eventually, but fresh onions go bad pretty quickly, so do fresh herbs. And as it sits in that mayonnaise, you're going to get that onioniness, but all the other nuanceness that you have in there. Now, this is where you can go crazy. You can add dried chives or fresh chives. Again, anytime you add a tailgate, food's probably not going to last very long. But if you're making this at home, fresh herbs will make a dip go bad within a couple of days. So fresh herbs like chopped parsley or chopped chives, better be prepared to eat it all. Oh yeah, that's a sacrifice. I could eat all the chip dip. Damn.
Yeah, and I don't think we're gonna be taking anything home with us at all. So
probably
it's just
not.
a matter of just a matter of getting it there, setting it up, and everyone's saying, "That's some pretty good food right there." You know,
there's good food. The other thing, and you could probably carry it hot, it doesn't have to be, it's easier to eat when it's hot, is a spinach artichoke dip.
Okay.
Now, walking a mile does present a bit of a challenge, especially if you're putting a hot thing in a cold cooler with beers.
Well, we could maybe have the cooler on my back and then carry something that's warm as well. So I think we could get away with some artichoke dip.
And that's fantastic. So you get either you can make your own pita chips, or you can go to the store and buy pita chips. Actually, the hint of lime chips. I forget. I don't know brand names. Tostitos.
Yeah, Tostitos. Yep, hint of lime.
They actually go well with that spinach artichoke dip, because the acid and the richness is a nice combination. So good foil against each other.
Never thought about that.
Those are two things you can make. There's somewhere else now this takes time. This isn't going to be a whip up thing, but you could make an eggplant dip, which is, now you have to like eggplant, you have to like bold, strong flavors, and that takes some actual cooking, and not everybody wants to do that.
I don't think I've ever eaten eggplant, Dan.
Oh man. Well, so it could be a really great experience. It could be a really not great experience, depending on how well it was or was not cooked. If it's not cooked at all, it's not going to be pleasant.
Okay.
So, but they're good. And people who like eggplant stuff, it's like, ooh, eggplants and tomatoes and olives and onion and garlic.
So what do you do with an eggplant dip? You like cook it up, dice it up, and then mix it with the olives and tomatoes and all that stuff? Or what do you, like, is it just like a kind of like a chunky salsa type thing, but with eggplant in it, with just different obviously different things like the olives and so forth, or is it like a smooth creamy dip that's made with eggplant that you like blend the eggplant up? What do you do?
It can be any of those things. So the last one, the smooth one, is called baba ganoush, and that's more of like a Lebanese Israeli dish.
Baba ganoush.
Yep, that takes time because you've got to cook the whole eggplant, scoop it out, smooth it, make a paste, add olive oil to it, and then add your stuff. There are recipes all over the internet for that. It's good. There is a dish you can Google. Again, there are as many. One of the interesting things about sort of Italian food is there are as many ways to make any one Italian dish as there are Italians who will make it. So how do you make minestrone? I don't know. How many Italians are there? So a thing called caponata is an eggplant dip that is fantastic. And like I said, there are 1,000 different ways to make it. And there aren't really, this is where sort of the commercial professional chef part and the guy who cooks part sort of separate. Okay. In a professional kitchen, we're going to make a recipe. We're going to stick strictly to that, partly because there's a consistency. The guest who comes back next week who had that thing wants it to be the same. Right. Yeah. When you're at home cooking, there isn't a food police. So if you decide in your eggplant dip, so the process, eggplant, now, there's more than a few things happening. Eggplant skin is especially bitter, and not everybody cares for bitter flavors. So you can peel eggplant, and that's perfectly fine. Eggplant, the berry, and that's what it is also a bit on the bitter side. And so some people will say salt the eggplant in advance. You'll see water seep up on top, pat that dry with paper towel, then cook it. It's a few extra steps. I don't do those extra steps because I like the flavor of bitter, and I don't mind that. Once you get to cooking it, even with the water removed, eggplant acts like a sponge. You can put a thin layer of oil in the bottom of the pan, add your eggplant, and the oil's going to disappear, and the eggplant's going to burn. You go, what the heck happened to the oil? It all got absorbed, and you can add more oil. It will keep absorbing it, and then something happens. Eggplant, like those peppers and those onions, there's cellulose. So it's not really wood fiber, but it kind of is. And
so it'll caramelize?
Well, it'll caramelize, but it will also absorb all of that oil because in between the cellulose, there's like little air holes, and they'll absorb. Eggplant will be like a sponge. Then enough heat is applied and enough steam goes through the little piece of eggplant that the cellulose loses its structure, and the piece of eggplant collapses onto itself, and then suddenly, whoosh, all the oil comes back. Like, where'd this oil come from? So It takes, there's two ways to do it. In the oven, nice and low and slow, or on the stove. You're going to be just not high heat, slow, low heat is going to caramelize. It will caramelize slowly on low heat, but eventually you're going to get that oil back, and then you add your onions, and if you like celery goes in there. You can add mushrooms. There's really nothing you can't add to the dip you're making for your party.
Awesome.
Your
Okay.
food.
So make it to taste is what you're saying. Make the caponata to taste. Okay.
Yeah. So capers is a popular addition to caponata, olives, tomatoes, celery. You could add fennel bulb to that because that's fantastic. It's very good all cooked up. And so what you want to have from that, and you're going to get, the tomatoes are going to give you liquid because they're wet. Eggplant's not going to give you liquid; it'll give you oil back.
Can I throw some feta cheese in there too?
Absolutely, of course you can.
Okay.
That'd be fantastic.
I love some feta cheese.
That's a good idea. You could add goat cheese. You could add blue cheese, but that's going to be kind of a fight because you're going to get competing flavors that may not match.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
feta
so
cheese would go. Feta cheese would work. Feta is a good idea.
I'll stick with feta cheese. See, I might be a chef in my own right, Just kidding.
Might be.
Just kidding.
Might
no, I can't cook worth a crap, to be honest with you. So let's move on from a small type thing. And if you've ever been to a Gator game up in Tallahassee, right? Those Seminoles, you get all those guys out there, and what do? They want to be smart, so they decide that they're gonna cook a freaking gator. I mean, they think they're clever, don't they? They're gonna go cook a gator. But Dan, we have a lot of fans that listen to our show, and we have people that listen to our show. We have a lot of people on the Facebook group that listen to our show that will be happy to cook a gator because they get beat by the gators on a regular basis. What's the secret to cooking a gator properly?
It's a great question. I don't really know the answer. The only few times I've cooked gator, we sliced the tail real thin, breaded it, and fried it.
Slice the tail real thin, bread it, and fry it. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Gator tail. So think about as a muscle. That thing does nothing but work. So it's not going to have a whole lot of fat in there. So because it's a very lean working muscle, it could be braised. I would imagine, so without having done that, I'm going to think there's a few things we could do. You could smoke it really low and slow, and there would be a ratio of time to pounds, and depends on how big your smoker is.
Yeah.
You could braise it, which. Now, I find gator tail to be insipid. It has, to me, it literally tastes like chicken. I find it phenomenally boring.
It's pretty typical that people describe it as chicken for sure. I've eaten plenty of gator in my life, and everyone said, "Oh yeah, chewy chicken."
Yeah, it truly is. And so I'm not much impressed with it. I would not go out of my way to get it. But if you wanted to do it, braising, because it's chicken, there's a lot of ways you could go. You could go Asian. You could go even deep. So, but back to the ghost peppers, you can make it hot. But what's your question?
Oh, so let me stop you there. So what you're saying is that when Seminole fans are cooking up gator, they kind of wasted their money, and they should have just cooked some chicken, is what you're saying. And then for us Florida Gator fans, that's why we don't cook gator at our tailgates.
I could not presume the preferences of anybody who cooks gator. I have no idea.
Yeah, so I'm going to move on from that question because the moral of the story is don't cook gator and cook razorbacks. What is a good way to cook up a pig at a tailgate? Because that happens all the time as well. You see people, they're smoking a pig. They might throw it in the ground and cook it that way. I don't know how they're doing it, but what is some good seasonings maybe to throw on that pulled pork? What are your thoughts on that?
I have a few kinds of barbecue sauces that I really am a big fan of.
Okay.
For
it's
beef,
a good direction to go.
I love the South Carolina barbecue sauce, that strong vinegar mustard thing. It's one of my favorites. I can't get enough of that. I make it a lot.
Okay. You do, okay. Do you make it fresh or do you buy it?
No, I don't buy barbecue sauce. I rarely buy barbecue sauce. Well, I have a couple of jars in the refrigerator just in case, but mostly I make my own.
Okay.
But part of the reason is when I'm making it as a braising liquid, and when the food is done, I'm reducing that sauce down to get that rich flavor that I want. So this smoke, someone's got these big MF smokers, and someone's got a big pig on there. I think this is what I like the like threefold flavor of the acid from a good apple cider vinegar, a rich tomato base flavor, and then something that's going to stand up to that. So you need a well, you can get flavor in a couple ways. A lot of garlic, a lot of onion. In a case like that, I think rosemary would stand up okay. A lot of thyme would stand up okay. But because I would want to have boldness, because the sugar and the acid together are going to give bold, and the tomato is going to give a layer of bold. So you need something that's going to be, you need a Tyson in there. You don't need some wimpy dink. You don't need Urkel. You need a big guy. So something like rosemary, something like, you know what else? This is going to sound crazy. Lavender leaves. Not
lavender leaves, huh?
Yep. Now, that might be hard for most people to get. Where I am in my part of the world, nearly everybody has lavender growing in the front yard. It's everywhere. But lavender, so the lavender flowers, everybody knows lavender flowers make pretty sachets for Granny's, unmentionables drawer. But
for sure.
The leaves, they have a similar flavor to the flowers without the, well, this is going to sound kind of redundant, without the floweriness. There is a base flavor of lavender when you get to the leaves that is, it's you know how rosemary has sort of a stand up and pay attention to me in this. Lavender has the same. It's not flowery at all. It's pretty masculine. It's a tough flavor, and it goes fantastic in things like tomato and vinegar and meat. It's an amazing, amazing herb.
Well, what I'm going to do is, if you could send me at the end, I'm going to give you an ask. If you could send me generally a good barbecue recipe, I'll post that on the Facebook group, as well as like a caponata recipe. That would be awesome as well. And not necessarily a recipe for the caponata, because you said kind of make it to taste, but some good ideas to throw in there. And then maybe even I'll post with this, that sausage topping with the tomatoes, take the skin off and so forth. I think those would be fun for all of our listeners to try out. So I got something a little bit funny for you, and I want to, I'm going to throw this at you. You don't have to take it too seriously or not, up to you. But give me the most unique mascot you could think of that might be legal, but on the edge of cringe that we can cook up. For example, you can't really cook up a Seminole, right? Because obviously that's a human. And clearly I'm not going to cook up a tiger, because I'm pretty sure that's illegal to do in the United States as well. And I only say cook up a Seminole because you like the Seminoles. But what's some cringe kind of, animals? But, it might be a good thing to cook up that's also a mascot.
Well, this is almost blasphemous to say, but if you hit a wolverine, you probably could eat it as roadkill.
That's okay. Good point. Yeah.
Same thing for a badger. You could eat a badger.
Yep. Badger.
So I don't. Okay. I think I don't really know. I think both probably badgers and wolverines in maybe all states, and I don't even really know if a wolverine is in all states. Certainly, it's in Michigan. I'm pretty sure the wolverine is a protected animal, and badger probably is a protected animal. I'm just trying to. So
that sounds cringe. I don't know that I want to. I don't know that I'd ever want to eat a badger, and I don't know that I ever want to eat a wolverine. But there's got to be a way to cook a weird animal like that, because that would actually make it taste decent. For example, one time we were camping, and some of the kids decided to shoot a squirrel, and we said, "Well, you killed it. Now you got to eat it. So the kids roasted it up and literally ate the damn squirrel, which was absolutely gross. My daughter actually tasted some of it, and she said it wasn't that bad. Now, we're not from West Virginia. You know that, Dan. I'm from Florida originally. So not nothing against West Virginia people, but that's what they're known for, right? But they cooked it over an open fire. So I imagine that maybe was why it gave it flavor. So if I happened to be strolling through Michigan, hit a Wolverine on my way to the Michigan versus Florida State game, and and decided to cook up a Wolverine, would the best thing that I could do is smoke that thing or what?
Well, you're going to have to do some work because just like, so let's say instead you hit a deer, you wouldn't actually roast a whole deer. You'd have to do some work because the loin of that deer is going to cook pretty quickly compared to the hind leg of that deer. So same thing with your roadkill. You're going to have to do a little bit of work. So you better have your butchering knife handy and some trays to put your butchered roadkill on.
Well,
so
my butchered Wolverine.
Got to get the loins off because those are going to. Now I have no idea what this is going to taste like. I would assume I've had wild boar, actual for real wild boar, and it is well, and you know. The word to describe game meat is gamey. Well, that's kind of stupid, except it is. What that means, it's a very powerful forward flavor. And when you take something like a loin of the animal and cook it past medium rare, its flavor turns into liver and the texture turns into shoe leather.
Gotcha.
So you don't want to overcook wild game.
And I imagine that Wolverine is pretty wild game, pretty nasty wild game as well. Is that right? Probably
nasty. So I don't know if it would taste good if you're doing that with your roadkill. The legs I would braise because it's, again, just like that alligator tail. It's just pure muscle. All those legs do is move that animal around endlessly.
Yeah.
So they're going to need to be braised to slowly break down the connective tissue to make the meat tender. It's going to end up being well done because it's going to sit in the pot for 6 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
Nothing you can do about that. That's what braising does. But it's going to at least make it tender, whether or not it's so palatable and edible aren't the same thing. That squirrel is edible.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it was particularly palatable. So it sounds to me like they're not going to do that again.
Yeah. Gotcha. So for all the Ohio State fans out there, though, at least you got a win out of listening to this episode, which is how the best way to cook up a Wolverine is, right? Now, clearly we can't cook up a Buckeye, so we can't go down that direction.
Why not? It's just a chestnut. Chestnuts are fantastic.
Duh. Okay, gotcha. I was thinking about their mascot, which is some weird looking dude. I thought anyway.
No, it's a chestnut.
It's a chestnut. All right. Well, then that. Do you have any good ideas for some chestnuts then? What do you do with some chestnuts?
Well, one, we think about our Christmas songs, chestnuts roasting at an open fire. So
for sure.
They're actually not amazing. But if you so get them out of the shell and then caramelize them. You have to blanch them and then caramelize. Yeah, easy for me to say. Caramelize them lightly. Then they're really good. Then you can also add chestnuts into your braise sauce at the end. Chestnut puree is nice. You can do. Now, if you are a homesteading rugged type, dry the chestnuts out, make flour out of them, then make bread out of them to dip into your alligator tail sauce.
Alligator tail, oh, that sounds good. Especially when we're braising it in the chestnuts as well, right?
Right.
So, wow. Now we just figured out how to do that for Wolverine and gator tail. And so whenever the Gators are playing the Ohio State Buckeyes at some point, that's what we're going to have to do, Dan, is make that particular mix right there. So
I don't think that ever happens, but who knows?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's happened once or twice where I think it's happened once, maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah, 2009 national championship game.
Yeah.
2008 season's national championship game. I believe it's Ohio State versus Florida. It might have been 2006. I'm not sure. Let's go ahead and wrap up. Though we're coming to some of the time point. I just wanted to thank you, though, for talking to me today, and I'm glad you became a member of Guys in the Bar Talking Sports and joined our family over here. You're our first actual guest on the show. You, my friend, have to have a nickname now because everybody on our show is anonymous, right? I go by Hanger, even though you know my name. One of my buddies goes by Chopper. We have the Rooster. We have the Dude. We have the Rebel. We have Who's Your Daddy. Now we have to come up with a nickname for you. So what is that nickname going to be for you, Dan the Man?
Jeez,
I mean, it could be Dan the Man for all I care, but what's it going to be?
Go. That's it, Dan the Man.
Dan the Man. All right.
Because literally, that was what I was called as a kid. That's the thing. No matter where I was, that was the name I had.
All right. Hey, do you have anything that you want to throw out there for promotion of your own show or anything that you're doing right now that you want to tell our guests about?
Well, yeah. So the website, even though the podcast name is Eating Liberty, it used to be the same name as the blog, which is the Culinary Libertarian. The show has moved on, but the blog remains. So the main page there is culinarylibertarian.com. And for all 5 years worth of podcast episodes, go to culinarylibertarian.com/podcasts in the plural, and you'll get all the shows. And you can also surf the rest of the website and there's more than a few recipes for all kinds of stuff on there if that's what you want, including the onion dip and the artichoke dip. So have at it.
That's awesome. So at the end of our show, I say something, and the last word you're going to say with me is going to be sports, okay? So, Dan, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. Keep on coming back, everybody, to more Guys at the Bar Talking Sports.